What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Backside Groundballs podcast, where we are on the campus of Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We're lucky enough to be joined by head coach of the Demon Deacons, Coach Tom Walter. Coach Walter, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. Backside ground balls, I talk about that all the time. some of your best exit velocities are backside ground balls, so that's a good thing. Exit velocity is a good thing.
Exit velocity is sure a good thing, and Colin and I were here yesterday for your guys' inner squad or live at-bats that you were running, and there were definitely some loud exit velocity numbers, I'm sure, by one in particular, and Nick Kurtz, who most people probably know pretty familiarly. But first question I got to ask you is, we're sitting here in January of 2024, preseason #1 program in the country, seemingly a player development factory, and at least from the outside perspective, ahead of everybody in data analytics. When you took the job in 2009, is this the vision you had for the program?
Well, it is. I mean, we always wanted to be first in player development. I mean, that's been a big part of kind of the fabric of this team. We've hired coaches from the north, from smaller schools, truthfully, that are used to developing players. You know, up there you don't kind of get the high-end recruits, so you got to bring in guys, and we wanted to keep that same basic philosophy here. So player development has always been front and center at what we do. Obviously, with the addition of data and technology and the pitching lab, it's kind of gone next level. But even back in 2009, as you said, that was the idea for sure.
So that's the vision. What then is the key to building that? Because I'm sure, as you know, since 2009, things in the landscape of college baseball have changed over and over, and you have to continue to try and stay out in front of that and on that. What are some of the keys to building what you've done?
Well, money is a big part of it. You know, we've had to go out and raise a good bit of money to change, really overhaul the face of our stadium. When, you know, you wouldn't believe what this place looked like when we got here, when Coach Salento and I got here in 2009. I mean, it was an old minor league park that was in total disrepair. They were building a brand new park downtown, so they kind of let this go, and we had a lot of work to do. I mean, I don't know that there's any piece of the stadium now left other than really the press box and, you know, maybe a couple of those concession stands down the first base line. But so a total overhaul of the facility is kind of first and foremost, and obviously with money. But then, as you mentioned before, the addition of data and technology. You know, we started with a 2 or 3 person analytics team, and now it's grown into a 22 person analytics team, and we've got a director of analytics, full-time director of analytics in Chris Lewis. We've added HitTrax on the field. So we're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and the question that I want to go to off of that is 2023 was a phenomenal season, banner year for the program. How do you stay there? What does it take going into 2024, where obviously preseason consensus #1 program, everybody's excited about what you have coming back and what you have to be able to put on the field? How do you stay in this position and be the consistent winner that I'm sure you want to and expect to be?
Yeah, as I said to our team, you know, the key is not stand still. You know what I mean? I think sometimes people get to that level and they think that continuing to do what they've always done is enough, and you've got to continue to grow and get better. And it's one of the things I love about our coaching staff here, Coach Moose, our pitching coach, and Billy, Matt Wessinger. They just have a growth mindset. They're always looking for ways to push the envelope and get us better. And again, one example of that is just adding HitTrax, adding on-field biomechanics. You know, we've always felt like we've been good enough offensively to go to Omaha. We just haven't really been good enough on the mound, you know, other than Colin's freshman year in 2017. You know, obviously he was a big part of that staff, but that staff, you know, was good enough to get us to Omaha. But now with the pitching lab and the analytics and everything we're doing, you know, our pitching staff is, you know, #1 pitching staff in the country last year.
You mentioned, you know, kind of instilling the mindset of not staying still with the players, and you hear coaches all the time talk about culture and getting guys to buy in. What does that look like for your program, and how do you go about, you know, setting that culture and getting those guys to buy in?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, 3 years ago, 2021, we struggled. I mean, we had a bad year. Now, there were a lot of reasons for that. We had our #1 and our #2 go down right before the season started, which, you know, any program is going to struggle to recover from that. And it was COVID, you know, coming out of COVID. We had some seniors here who didn't feel like they were going to be here as seniors. They thought they were going to be junior drafts and gone. And Then we got out of the gate kind of slow, and then the team got COVID, and we missed like 10 days as a team, and we went down to Miami with like 14 players and got swept at Miami, and it kind of spiraled into a really bad season. But one of the kind of things that happened in that moment was that, we decided that we needed to become way more intentional about our team culture. We couldn't take that for granted. Again, when Colin was there, we had such a great group of guys. We were so close knit, and we had leaders on that team, and we lost that kind of that leadership edge along the way. We've always wanted to be a player-led organization. We talk all the time, don't be coach-fed, be player-led. Right. And, I think we got into that, that COVID era where we weren't player-led anymore. So I pulled all the freshmen into my office. I'll never forget. It was in April. I pulled all the freshmen in my office that included Rhett Lauder and Brock Wilkin and Cam Manassi and Seth Keener and that really talented group of guys. And I told them, and I said, look, this is not what this is supposed to look like. This is not who we are as a team. And we're struggling right now. We've got two options here. We can either break apart and everybody can transfer and we can just blow this thing up and start over next year, or this group of guys can come closer together, bond with one another and start to lay the bricks for the future. And that's what they did. I give those guys credit. And we swept Pitt at the end of that year, which again was an awesome kind of cherry on the top to say, okay, now we know what it doesn't look like, and now we know what it does look like. Because that last weekend, it was funny, those seniors who were mostly disengaged all year, it was the last weekend ever playing college baseball. So they were kind of into it, and we had some success, and it kind of snowballed. And so our freshmen got a taste of what that could feel like, that team chemistry that we wanted. And then the next year, sorry, it's probably a longer answer than you wanted, but then the next year, we started the year off with a team retreat. And we've done that now 3 years in a row. As Colin remembers, we read a team book we always do. And that year we read a team book called It Takes What It Takes, and Trevor Moed, and we went away on a team retreat. We talked about the book, and we had some really direct and open conversations about, what do we want this to look like? Like, who are we? What do we do?
We had a conversation with Rhett probably a couple weeks ago, and I kind of gauged the question of, I almost felt like he was the epitome of the rise of Wake Forest baseball, right? That 2021 season, he struggled, the team struggled, right? 2022, it seems like everything's heading in the right direction, and then in 2023, it blew up for everybody, right? And obviously, he was a big part of that success, and it's funny to hear that. It almost seems like that meeting is kind of where the tides turned to that group in 2023 that seemed like they had so much fun. I mean, they were fun to watch. I'm sure they were fun to be a part of. It was fun just to watch them on TV, and you're like, man, I really wish that, when you think about, as guys that were former college coaches, that's what you miss the most. What was the run of that 2023 season like, and what am I right in the fact that it seemed like that group had a lot of fun, and that was probably a core of what allowed that team to be so successful?
You're so right. I told our team in our first meeting of the year, I said to them, we were the darlings of Omaha last year and part of it was because we're the underdog and we hadn't been there in a while, and, nobody maybe expected us to be there. But it was more because of how our guys, played the game and how they interacted with each other. And, our team motto last year was make them feel you. And that's something we spent a lot of time talking about at our team. Our book last year was Legacy. About the New Zealand All Blacks. So we talked a lot about what's our legacy, what do we want this team to be? And, I think what we decided, it boiled down to, for us, the two things we want to be best at in this program are, one, we want our players to love each other more than any other program in the country. Number two, we want to lead the league in using data and technology for player development. Those are the two things we do better than anybody else, and that's who we are. And as a result, we have to tie all our decisions back to those two things. And that's what we did really well last year. Our guys, you watched us play, and they cared about each other. And you heard the post-game press conferences, and those guys are just talking about brotherhood and family and how much they just love being with this group of guys. And, it showed up in everything we did. And that I tell this story all the time, but one of the culminations of it for me last year was this past Halloween when I had, Brock Wilkin, get kids dressed up like Brock Wilkin show up at my door, asking for candy. I had 3 Rhett Lauders, I had 2 Josh Hartles, you know what I mean? I had Nick Kurtz, a couple Spidey doing the Spidey things, so it's talk about make them feel you. You got kids dressed up as specific Wake Forest baseball players. And, I don't know that I would have ever dreamed that something like that could happen. It was really special.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, the darlings of that World Series. I can speak for, I think, a lot of people. Like, I know I was pulling for you guys so much, and obviously because of Colin, but also just like you're saying, watching those guys and how they were competing together and the love that was so evident. So that team was the darlings. This team, there's a little more expectations. We've talked about kind of managing expectations a little bit. How do you maintain the success? In your vision of what you've seen so far, we're still early on, what do you kind of think the identity of this team looks like, or what do you maybe want the identity of this team? Because I think, year to year, it's always different depending on the guys in the room.
It's always different. I think we're going to be a little more of a grinder team. We've got some of these older position players that have transferred from other places, Adam Tellier and Tate Ballestero and Austin Hawk and Mitchell Salvino, Cameron Gill, so we've got some our team is a little bit of a dichotomy, right? Because we have some star power. Like, we have some serious star power. You talked about Nick Kurtz. We've got Seaver King. We've got Michael Massey, Josh Hartle, and Chase Burns. I mean, we've got 5 potential first rounders, which that would be unheard of in college baseball. 3's the most anybody's ever had. So we've got some star power. But on the flip side of that is we have some guys that are just kind of grinder guys. You know what I mean? Guys that have proven success in college baseball, that are a little older, that came in to fill some really great pieces for us. So we're, we're kind of a blend of those two worlds. And what I love is the one wild card in all this has really been, really Chase Burns and Seaver King, because we didn't know as much about who they were inside headed into this season. We didn't do as much homework because the transfer portal process happened so fast for those two guys. And it was either kind of you're in or you're out. And, Seaver King wanted to make his decision before he went to the Cape, which we were fortunate he chose us. And Chase Burns, was kind of going through the same process. And we really kind of hit the jackpot with those two guys because they have fit right into our team culture and really become one of the guys. I mean, we heard things about Chase Burns. Oh, he was kind of kept to himself at Tennessee. He didn't really kind of get along with the other guys on the team. And he's been the complete opposite here. He's totally invested in this group of guys. And I set my exit meeting with him in December, my fall exit meeting with him. And he's just grinning from ear to ear, talking about how much he loves it here at Wake Forest and how much he loves the guys and being part of this program. So, for me, that's really special when Seaver King and Chase Burns hit the ground running. But, the fact that we have such a strong team culture and sense of family that we welcome those guys in. Like, we didn't I think in other programs, those kids, there might have been some pushback there, and some jealousy or whatever, but not in our program. And those guys got not only accepted, but they're leaders on our team.
You mentioned the transfers a couple times there, and obviously it's a big piece to the on-field production, but I think the fact that you highlighted the culture aspect is so important because you never know, right? You said the process works so fast in getting those guys in. Is there a protocol to it, to how do you kind of get transfers up and running? Is it just by making sure you communicate with the guys that are here that we're a welcoming environment for everybody, kind of like you mentioned? What kind of goes into making sure that those guys are going to be a culture fit? Because we all know, we've all been in college programs where the guy could be the most talented guy in the world, but he's not the culture fit that you're looking for. And times that can be more detriment than help in terms of how it translates to on-field success.
Yeah, it comes down to the players. Last year, Rhett Lauder and Brock Wilkin and Cam Manassi and those guys, they welcomed Bennett Lee and Michael Massey and Sean Sullivan and Justin Johnson because they knew they made us better, right? They knew they could put us over the top and give us a legitimate chance to win a national championship. So, one, it's having guys come into the program with the right mindset. One of the things we talk about all the time in our, that great leaders all share 2 qualities, and that's humility and gratitude. So we talk a lot about those 2 things in our team meeting room. And one of the adjustments we've made is we've really used this team meeting room. We start every practice in there. We'll put a video up there. We'll put the practice plan up there. We'll have a message of the day. And I think that's really helped kind of gel this team. Again, for me, team culture boils down to shared experiences, which are things like the retreat and the book and things like that. We have team meals. They had a team meal in here 2 nights ago, just on a random Saturday night. It's like team meal in the clubhouse. Everybody's here, and a couple of our upperclassmen have houses off campus. So there'll be guys over there watching Monday Night Football or whatever. And then the second thing is shared language. Like you have to be speaking the same language. And if everybody's speaking the same language, then it's just that sense of kind of unity. And again, I refer back to Colin's year in 2017. We read The Boys in the Boat that year. And what an incredible book that ended up being for our team. It got to the point of the year where Parker Johnson goes out and buys like this inflatable raft, and it's like in the middle of our clubhouse. And like every day I walk in the clubhouse and there's kids sitting in the raft, and then the oars are going on the road with us. And we were at Florida, and the umpire came up to me. He's like you can't have those oars in the dugout. I'm like, why not? Yeah, like what are we talking about? And so anyway, and that was the same way with this team last year. They just took our motto of make them feel you, and they turned it into what it became, which was make every single person that you interact with every single day feel you. Your professors, the fans, the kid is looking for an autograph, an elderly person who needs help across the street, whatever, hold the door for somebody, make eye contact, put your phone down, that kind of stuff. And again, those are the things we talk about, and our kids really embraced that and took off with it.
I think it probably must take a really special group of leaders in that clubhouse to kind of get everyone on that same page. But when it happens, you kind of see this success and how it can run itself, and how nice that must be as a coaching staff to know that those guys have got it figured out down there. Back to the transfer portal real quick. What has the adjustment been for you and your program with the new transfer rules, and how guys are kind of in and out, and that can that rattle a culture in your opinion? And has there been an adjustment from you and the staff of kind of dealing with the portal on the whole?
Yeah, for sure. It's been I've never seen so many changes in college athletics than the last couple of years, because you not only did you have the portal, but then you had NIL kind of right on top of it, and the waiver of the transfer sitting out a year, kind of all together. But you also had the movement of the moving of the draft. Like people don't talk often about what a big difference that was, moving the draft to July 11th or 12th or whatever it is, because our scholarships are due July 1 for the next year. We're not 100% sure we're going to lose in the draft, whether it's current players or returning players. And now you're adding the transfer portal to the mix too. So, like last year we got back from Omaha, like we spent the next 30 days like working, like in the portal. There was no time to celebrate or reflect. It was like we got to get in the portal and because we knew we were going to lose a bunch of guys in the draft, and we had to replace those pieces. So we were, in the portal immediately. For us, how I look at NIL and the portal is I look at it like a little bit like I'm a Yankee fan. I'm not afraid to admit it. And I know a lot of Delaware people are, I think. But when the Yankees were really good, right, they were homegrown in the middle of the field, like Jeter, Posada, Rivera, Pettit, Bernie Williams. Like the crux of their team and their leadership was homegrown. And then they added like clubhouse pieces, guys that were just added to your clubhouse, made the room better, kind of gamer veteran guys, Scott Brocious, Paul O'Neill, guys like that. But then they also added a little star power, Roger Clemens or Hideki Matsui. And that's how I look at the portal for us. Like I want to be homegrown. So I want the crux of our team to be guys who started here as freshmen, but I do want to add some clubhouse depth, and I do want to add some star power. Like that's how I want to use the portal and NIL opportunities.
Have you found that strategy of roster building? Like, is that something you think you can continue to be successful with? And I guess my question in that is it hard? Do you almost feel like you have to recruit your own roster at times, because guys can also, it goes the other way, right? The portal isn't just one way. They're not just coming in, although I'm sure a ton of people want to come and play for this program. But if guys aren't happy, they want to go out too. Is it almost like do you feel like you have to recruit your own roster almost at times?
Yeah, you do. We joke about it. At least they changed the recruiting calendar where you're not recruiting ninth graders anymore, because it seemed like there was a stretch that you were recruiting people for 8 years, like 4 years before they got here and then 4 after while they were here. But so at least that window shortened a little. But yeah, and again, I don't look at it necessarily as recruitment as I do just building the right environment where they want to be here every day. Like our kids, they don't want to leave our program because they just love being on the field, every day. They just love being here in the clubhouse. They love being around each other. So, our retention rate, we lost a couple guys in the portal, But again, it wasn't anybody that we felt like we couldn't afford to lose. You know, we kept the guys we needed to keep, and you know, certainly Hartle and Kurtz and those, and Merrick Houston, Michael Massey, those guys could have all gone elsewhere and gotten big NIL deals to go somewhere else, but they wanted to be here. And you know, that again ties back to that team culture. So if you have your team culture right, if you have your leadership group right and the locker room right, I think that stuff takes care of itself. And as far as like for us, like we've become a destination program, and that wasn't always the case. We had to really recruit under the radar screen and develop. And now we've kind of flipped that a little bit where, you know, people want to come here. And because of our track record of success recently and development, but also because people trust us, you know, quite honestly, the agents want to send their kids here. Right. Because they know that they're going to get developed. They know they're going to get treated fairly. We know we're going to have their best interests at heart. So, you know, again, and unfortunately, not every program can say that.
And I want to talk about like the aspect of keeping the talented freshmen, right? Like, because that's what I think every program probably loses, every program head loses sleep over, is that talented freshman who is behind, you know, a pitching rotation of Chase Burns, Josh Hartle, Michael Massey, and he might not be getting the innings that he wants, and somebody's in his ear, hey, you could be our guy next year right away. What's the components that go into making sure that guy understands the process of being like, it's going to pay off? Is it communication? Is it relationships? Are those the main factors in making sure that guy stays happy and doesn't take the bait from another program that's offering him something that might be sunshine and rainbows?
Yeah, the communication and relationships are obviously front and center, and you know, the transparency, you know, and there's three different groups of people that are, well, four different groups of people that are super involved in that, right? So you've got our coaching staff, and we've got to touch these guys more. We've got to make them feel loved. We've got to make them understand what their development plan is, because if they're confident in their development plan and where they're headed, they're probably going to stick it out. If they're not sure about what their development plan is, or they don't know what their future is, you know, that's when it can get off rails. The second group is the parents. Like, you've got to engage the parents. Like, I spent a lot of time talking with our parents and communicating with our parents, because again, their message, and I have a meeting every year with our incoming, like, new parents, and I talk about, like, this is how you can help us. This is how you can hurt us. Like, saying things like, you know, oh, the coach doesn't know what he's doing, that hurts us. You know what I mean? Saying things like, have you gone and talked to the coach about it? You know what I mean? I'm not saying you should take my side in these situations. What I'm saying is encourage your son to come and have a conversation. If he has questions, if he's coming to you with things, encourage him to come and talk to me about them. And we say those to the players as well. The third group of people is the agent. Like, the agent, like, if we have a good relationship with the agent and we're communicating with the agent, then the agent's saying to the kid, hey, you're in the right place. And like, sometimes when we go talk to the kid, it can come off as self-serving, right? Oh, it's just coach telling me, you know, what he wants, you know. But if it's coming from the agent and or the parents, then there's just kind of that built-in trust factor. And then the last piece is the current players. Like, when you're a young player and Nick Kurtz says to you, hey, coach has a plan, trust these guys, man, I mean, that goes so far. So, like, you need to have the coaches, the parents, the agent, you know what I mean? You know, all aligned. Like, everybody's going to be, and again, that's where that shared language comes in. If we have a really good development plan that we've communicated to the agent and to the parents and to the kid, you know, and then kid's hearing that same language, and he's like, oh man, these guys are thinking about me. These guys, I'm in the plans. This is going to end well.
In 15 years of now doing this, I guess, is that, like, are some of those lessons right there the biggest things you've learned and adapted? Because I'm hearing a lot, like, we haven't even talked about X's and O's with you, because as a head coach at a program like this, there is so much, for lack of a better term, CEO responsibilities that you're in charge of for the program, making sure that your other assistants are communicating, making sure that you're communicating with parents, making sure you're communicating with agents, all of these things, knowing what the recruiting board looks like. Is like learning those skills in your 15 years, is that the thing that you feel like you've grown the most in?
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like I've grown in every aspect of it. You know, my communication with the assistant coaches has gotten better, and it needs to continue to get better. Again, that growth mindset. I mean, I can't stand still either. So I've got to continue. But to your point, like, it seems like the higher you go and the more successful you are, the less actual coaching you do. You know, because you're dealing more with alums and financial aid and admissions and, you know, and all the different kind of pieces of your program. To your point, like I could see like a scenario in the next couple of years where college baseball programs have general managers, right? Where it frees up the head coach to do more coaching. And I like assistant coaches that I talk to Moose and Billy about this all the time. And it's like, and you look at a guy like Kevin McMullen who's been at Virginia for so long, and why is that? Because he loves what he does.
Right.
You know, assistant coaches get to focus on their current players and recruits. Right. And that's all they worry about. They don't have to worry about all the other stuff. And if a guy like Kevin McMullen or Bill Salento or Corey Mascara leaves, then all of a sudden that shifts and they've got to deal with more of the stuff that I have to deal with. And that maybe they want that, maybe they don't want that. But point of the matter is you have to make an intentional decision about that, about what, you know, because, you know, to your point, it's more CEO than it is coach.
Right.
How important is it to have the right assistants then in the boat with you to make sure that everything flows as the way you want as the CEO, where you don't feel like you're being pulled to the pitching staff because guys might not be getting what they want, or you're not being pulled to help the hitters out because they might not be getting what they want? Obviously, you've been with Coach Salento since you've stepped foot on campus here, and Coach Muscara has been around for a little bit less time. But how important is it to have the right mix of great assistant coaches that you trust, and then that factors into the players trusting and all of the thing, just the trickle-down effect, as you said, the agents and having that trust, and now everybody's in lockstep. How important are the assistants to having that success?
It's the number one most important thing. I mean, aligned leadership is what it boils down to. You've got to have everybody pulling the same direction. You know, to back to the boys in the boat reference, right? That oar's got to hit the water at the same exact time, right? And you've got to have ultimate trust. Like they've got to trust me, I've got to trust them, because the players feel that. Like as soon as that gets off rails, the players feel that more than anybody. And in our bad year in 21, that's kind of what happened a little bit too, is we just had some doubts, you know, about whether everybody was on the same page or not. And then that starts to fester, and then the team struggles. And instead of like putting your attention on the task at hand, that's when everybody starts to pick everything apart. And that's when it can get spiral. But, you know, if you don't have the right coaches that you trust, and our team of people, and we've added to it, we've got the pitching lab coordinator and the analytics person now, you know, we've got a pitching lab intern, we've got the director of baseball operations that's been a huge underrated part of our, you know, of how our staff has come together, to have that person that just kind of makes sure everybody's taken care of, and we're communicating. We've added teamworks, so our guys, you know, they're getting messages from us every single day about something. So again, you know, in today's day and age, you know, your players have to feel love. They have to feel touched. They have to feel important, or they won't play for you. But if they do, they'll go to the wall. Like I love all these old coaches today that say, "Oh, kids are so different. They're different." No, they're not. The kids care about the same things they've always cared about. And don't tell me they won't work hard, because they will. The difference is, like 10, 15 years ago, kids will work hard without knowing why. Now kids have to believe in why they're working hard. They have to know why they're doing it, and they have to believe in the mission of the organization. But once you get the buy-in on the mission of the organization and they understand why they're doing something, these kids will work to the bone. I mean, they'll work as hard as any generation prior, and maybe even harder.
I really, as someone who's of the younger generation, I really appreciate you saying that, because that honestly, it seriously means a lot, because you hear it all the time, especially in the sports world, right? And the term that makes me the most angry is soft. Kids these days are soft. It's like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, At the end of the day, what are you talking about? And it's like you said, they're different. They want to know why, and that's probably a good thing, right? And kind of shifting that into, because they have more information at their fingertips than ever before, right? And we've mentioned a few times data and analytics, and that is a hot button subject still in baseball for some reason. Can you just talk a little bit about why that's been so important for your program, and kind of, do you remember the day you made the decision of like, we need to be on the forefront of this because this is a good thing to move the game forward? This isn't a scary boogeyman that it seems like for some people.
Yeah, I do remember the day. It was kind of all happened at the same time. We got Trackman here, and we weren't really using it. We didn't really know how to use it, and nobody really did, right? Again, and we talked to a couple guys. We had a guy, TJ Barra, that was working with the Mets at the time, and he's now actually with the Milwaukee Bucks, director of analytics. He went from the Mets to the Bucks. Nice. And won a championship and got a ring with the Bucks. He's a weight guy, and we talked to him about Trackman because, again, we had Matt Hobbs as our pitching coach, who was phenomenal. And I went to him. I was like, man, we've got to find a way to use this technology. And give credit to Matt Hobbs. He took it and ran with it and has become the, as good a pitching coach. Matt Hobbs and Corey Muscara and Brownie at Vanderbilt are like the 3 best pitching coaches in the country. And all 3 of those guys use technology to the hilt. Right? You have to. That's what these kids want. These kids, they see it on social media. They understand what the numbers are. They want to know. Again, they have to feel confident in their delivery and their pitch plan and their development. And if they feel that, back to the point you made, if they feel that, they're totally all bought in. Right. But they have to understand that, and data is quite honestly the simplest way to do it. Like, here's the numbers. This is what makes you unique. These are your outlier characteristics. This is what our plan is to make you better. This is what you look like today. This is what we want you to look like in 6 months. And it's not just pitch characteristics and outlier qualities, but it's also how you move. You know what I mean? So when we bucket pitching development, we bucket into 3 categories. Number 1 is biomechanics, also known as how you move. Number 2 is ball flight data. What's the ball doing, ball metrics. And number 3 is what we call the art of pitching, which is holding runners and fielding your position and being able to cross count your breaking ball. Colin wasn't that good at that. But these are the things like being good in all 3 of those areas, right? And as I tell our guys all the time, it doesn't matter where you are in the stage of development. It just matters that you're pointed the right direction, that we're making. And some guys, it happens really fast for Rhett Lauder. Other guys, it takes a little longer, like Cam Minoski. But it gets there, because we have a plan of development and attack. But you've got to, again, for me, gone are the days where you can't have this communication with your kids, because if you don't give it to them, they're going to go find it elsewhere, right, and they're going to be getting misinformation.
Yeah, we'll just gloss by the fact that you hired 2 of the 3 best pitching coaches in the country, which is super impressive. That's a different conversation that we could branch down. I want to talk about you mentioned growth mindset several times. When you started your coaching career, you mentioned backside ground balls and exit velocity, and that was a way to teach hitting a lot more vocally, and it's completely changed in the pitching development side. It's completely more information. Is it the growth mindset that allows you to be open-minded to that? Because so many coaches get stuck in neutral by not adapting and changing when they have to, where it seems like you're like, hey, this is going to make us better. This is going to bring the program to be what we want it to be. Why wouldn't we use it? It costs money. We put it in here. Let's use it and find a way to be the best in the country at using it. What's kind of the open-mindedness that goes into adapting and changing when you know you need to?
Well, I think it's more than anything, it's just meeting the kids where they are. Like, again, that's what the game requires. That's why I think our guys go out into pro ball and are successful, because, again, they're armed with the information. They know who they are. They know what they do really well, and they know how to capitalize on that. So our guys step into pro ball and they're ready for that. So, and that's part of what we do here too, is get guys ready for pro ball. Again, when I list the 5 priorities of our program to our guys, priority number 1 is that you leave here a better human being. That you're, a man of kindness and empathy, and you celebrate diversity, and you're going to make a difference in your community, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is their relationship with each other, and how much they love one another. Number 3 is that they on track for a really good degree that's going to help them in life after baseball. Number 4 is using technology to develop. And then number 5 is win. And again, as I say, winning is important. Don't get me wrong; it's not unimportant, but it's never going to be more important than those first 4 things. And again, we lay that out for them, and our guys really kind of embrace that and run with them. But to answer your question, back to your question, which is a great one, is it's what it is. This is and ignoring that. I look at some of these major league teams, and I see some teams that are all in on it. I see some teams that are all out on it, and I don't understand. Like, I don't think you should be 100% data. I think there's some feel and some game. I think using the data, like, what is data? Data is helps you predict the future, right? So you have to use the data, but at the same time, you have to trust your baseball instincts too, and how you blend those together. And again, I think our staff is really good at that blend.
Well, balance, right? Like, that's what I'm hearing, is like everything takes balance. Even in what you just said, the 5 things that you list to your guys, right? You need a little bit of all of those. Is there a concerted effort, though, at teaching the guys that winning at all costs isn't the way to go about things? Is that something that you really have to instill? Because there is pressure to win here, right? And there's pressure to win at this level, and there's pressure to win at this university. So how do you go about teaching those guys? And is it something you have to teach them of like, hey, it's not all about wins and losses. That can't be the only thing you live by, because, we mention this all the time. Forget what coach was talking about it, but won a national championship, and the most depressing day of their life was the next day when they realized nothing changed about their lives just because they won a national championship. Is that something, like, do you have a concerted effort of explaining that to your guys and teaching them that?
We do. We talked. I had a session with our guys not that long ago where we talked about Jim Collins from good to great, right? And Jim Collins, studied these organizations that gone from being good to being great at what they do. Wells Fargo, Apple, et cetera. And he says there's three things that separate those companies. One, hedgehog mentality. They know what they do, and they do that really well. Number two, they have the right people on the bus, and they're in the right seats in the bus. You got the forward thinkers, innovators in the front. You got the kind of back of the house guys, the grinder support guys in the back. And number three, you have a level 5 leader, right? A level 5 leader is willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish the mission of the organization. And what I said to our team was, when we were going through this exercise with the team, I said, this is what we do. We use technology to develop players. We love each other more than anybody else. That's what we do. That's who we are. And that's what we're going to tie all our decisions back to that. We obviously have the right people on the bus. If you weren't the right person, you wouldn't be in the room, right? So we're good there. We know who our leaders are. We're good there. And I told the team, I said, I had to ask myself a really hard question. Am I a level 5 leader? And I said to the team, I said, well, that depends on what you think the mission of this organization is. If you think the mission of this organization is to win a national championship, then no, I'm not a level 5 leader. Absolutely not, because I'm not willing to do whatever it takes to win a national championship. I'm not willing to lie, steal, chill, run guys out of our program, treat our players poorly. I'm just not willing to do those things, right? However, if you think the mission of our organization is to develop amazing young men who are going to go out and be great fathers, great citizens, give back to their communities, great husbands who make a difference in the world, who also have a really good chance to win a national championship, that's exactly who I am. So again, we always tie it back to those priorities. Everything ties back to this is who we are, this is what we do. We tie everything back to that.
I'm starting to see why Colin speaks so highly of you. So just after having this conversation, and that brings me to the next part of it. How important is you being the representative of being the good person so that the guys can look up to you and see that, like, it's very easy for you to talk about doing the right things off the field, being a part of the community, but then they turn around and you're not there in the weeds with them and doing that kind of stuff. And obviously the story that is on the behind home plate of you donating a kidney to a player, and just big picture, talk about what that means to be the representative, and even how important that decision to donate the kidney to one of your players was, in what you want to be as a college coach that isn't just win at all costs in a national championship.
Well, I think for all of our coaching staff, it's critical, and it has to be to it, man, from myself, down to the equipment manager and our trainer and our strength coach and our ops guy and everybody in between. We've got to be the example, right? Because as soon as you're not, then everything you say is just words. You know what I mean? That has to be followed up with action. When I look at Bill Salento, I mean, he's the best father I know. And then Corey Mascaro's right there with him. These guys are great husbands and great fathers who are first and foremost dedicated to their families. And what a great example for our guys. You know what I mean? You got Tony Joyce, our equipment guy, who would do anything for these guys. And Jeff Strom, who, is here at 7 a.m. and leaves at 8 o'clock at night. He and I are the last two to leave every night. So again, the players see that and they recognize. And at the end of the day, it's coaching is the same as parenting. Like, at the end of the day, your kids have to know that you're in this with them. They have to know that you love them, because things are going to get hard, and they have to know they're in the right place with the right people. So, and that certainly starts with me. And I have to be the person that holds myself to the highest standard, but our other coaches are right there and doing the same exact things and setting paving the way.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that. And it's kind of incredible. And when you started this journey as a head coach, did you kind of foresee that's the kind of head coach you were going to be? Have you always been that way? And if so, is that something you've picked up along the way? Is that just how you were raised as a person? Kind of where does that mindset come from?
Yeah, well, as I've gotten older, I yell less than I used to. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to believe I've always been a player's coach. I think that's something, again, that relationship is really important to me, and it's one of the reasons, I coach. Coaches today now get paid a lot more, so people could actually say they do it for money now. When I first started coaching, I was making my first head coaching job, I made $33,000, and I was the happiest person on the planet. Like, I would have done it for $3,000. Right, I would do this job. Don't tell my AD, but I would do this job for $3,000.
We'll edit that out.
But point is that, like, and that's the thing. Like, I tell this story all the time. It's one of my favorite stories to tell our team every year. I tell this story about my son, Chase, and Colin probably heard me tell this story. I'll never forget. Chase was his first ever Little League game that he was ever playing. And it's, how, like when you're like half asleep, but you're kind of awake, and somebody's standing there, but you're not really awake yet. And I knew somebody was standing there, and I opened my eyes, and there's Chase. He's in full uniform. Right. And I look at the clock, it's like 3:50 a.m. Right. And I'm like, buddy, like, what are you doing? He's like, Dad, what time are we leaving for the game? And I was like, we're leaving in 7 hours. Right. And so he thinks about that for a second. He goes, well, can we go hit in the backyard? And it's like, I tell that story because it's like, don't ever forget why you started playing this game. Like, you started playing this game because you couldn't wait to go to the ballpark. Right. Like, you put your uniform on 7 hours in advance. Right. And it's the same thing as coaches. Like, don't forget why you started coaching. You started coaching because you love dealing with the players. Right? Yeah, you love the competing and you love the winning, but more than anything else, you just love being in the clubhouse with the guys and on the buses. I tell our guys all the time, it's like, we had a long road trip last year. We flew to Florida State, and then we drove to Wilmington for a midweek. So we because it was spring, it was after exams, and it was like we didn't have really anywhere to go, and it's impossible to fly from Tallahassee to Wilmington. So we're like, we'll just drive halfway. We'll stay in Savannah, and then we'll drive the rest of the Wilmington. So we're cruising, and like before this trip, I'm like preparing the guys. I'm like, look, 25 years from now, you're not going to be talking about whether we built Wilmington or not. We beat them, whether we won the game. You're going to be talking about this bus ride and how you're hanging out on the bus and how miserable you all were together, right? But that's what you're going to like. That's the best stuff there is. And again, creating that environment where your kids celebrate that stuff and appreciate it. That's the whole deal.
Was there an aha moment for that? Where was it when Chase woke you up at 3:50 in the morning, and where you started to realize? I call it like the, just the kid feel of the game. I work with a lot of families at the Performance Academy that want to play in college baseball. As the director of Showcase there, and I have that conversation. It's like, if it's not fun, we probably need to have a conversation of whether you're actually making the right strides and steps. Was there an aha moment for you where that was kind of a switch that flipped? Because, again, going back to the culture, the 2023 season, how enjoyable your team was to watch. The fun aspect of baseball was why I think myself and everybody else in the college baseball community were rooting for them every step of the way, because it made you feel like you were watching a bunch of kids, in a good way, play baseball and just go out there and enjoy being a part of a team and a group.
Yeah, I don't know if there was an aha moment, but there were definitely influences along the way. Like, I had a coach growing up, Dede Osborne, who I still stay in touch with, that, promoted that kind of environment. He wasn't the best baseball guy in the world, but you knew he loved you, and you knew that, like, he'd take a bullet for you. Like, and his teams, were just really close-knit. And then I got to Georgetown and played there, and I was very fortunate to play there. We didn't have the success on the field we wanted to have, but we just had a group of guys that, like, again, still stays in touch. I see all those guys almost like there must have been 15 of my teammates in Omaha with us last year, and we had a bunch of guys here for the Super Regional and guys here for the Regional the weekend before that. So, again, for me, it's always been about relationships. Again, yeah, you want to win. Yeah, we want to get a great degree, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships, because that's all we have.
So I'm just curious here. You've come this far. If we fast forward 15 years from now, what is your kind of hope for what Wake Forest looks like, and for what maybe you're doing in 15 years? Are you a couple national championships maybe, seeing this thing continue to grow? What's kind of, if we could fast forward 15 years, what would you like it to look like?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go to Omaha 5 out of the next 10 years and win 2 of them. That's a big part of this. That's what I want to do. I want to establish Wake Forest baseball as a national powerhouse, year in, year out. We've kind of been in this 3-year cycle. Like, I look at our program and I'm like, 1 year we're young, the next year we're pretty good, the next year we're really good, then we're kind of young, pretty good. And again, I understand why that is. We have a high cost of school and our financial aid's not great and we don't have any academic scholarships. So I understand why that happens. You have a big class that's really good, they get older and they're good, and then the kind of cycle starts over again. And now I think hopefully with the portal and being able to add some of those pieces, and now being a destination program that's known for developing, I think we can, again, I still think we're going to have, maybe 1 of every 4 years where we're young, because at some point you have to play your freshmen. I was telling our coach, our assistants that the other day. It's like, at some point we have to play the freshmen because that's how they develop. I don't care how good your development plan is. If they're not on the field, they don't develop. So, so to answer your question, though, again, I want to help establish Wake Forest baseball as, like, one of the 3 or 4 premier programs in the country where, you can get a top 25 degree and a top 5 baseball experience.
I love that. And, talking about the 2024 season specifically, and obviously we're getting closer to 45 minutes, and I know we have a lot of stuff planned today, so we want to be respectful of your time, but I could sit here and do this all day. We could go for 6 hours. But speaking of the 2024 season, obviously we've highlighted some of the names and talked a little bit in detail about, the guys that are going to make an impact. What's kind of your outlook, and what obviously the goals, I'm assuming, are Omaha and winning a national championship, obviously with the preseason #1, but how do you get there, right? What's the process-oriented goals? What's kind of the focus right now as you guys transition into team practice at the end of this week and getting ready to go against Fordham in, 20-some days, I'm assuming?
25 days. Yeah.
25 days. So what are the steps to get to where you want to go?
Obviously building our pitchers up is kind of #1, getting those starters hopefully by opening weekend where they can beat about 80 pitches. Is priority 1. But, figuring out our bullpen pieces. Last year we had an older bullpen with Cam Manassi and Seth Keener. Even Sully was at times in the bullpen. This year we're going to have some youth in our bullpen. We've got some really talented freshman arms, and they're going to have roles. Like last year, I look at last year's team, and other than Merrick Houston, we didn't play a ton of freshmen last year. So now we have some freshmen that are going to have to contribute and have to have big roles. And again, they're probably not going to be ready for those roles in March, but we just need them to be ready by April, and we should have a good enough team where we can kind of stay the course until we pull it all together. But we've got to figure out our bullpen, pieces is kind of the #1 most important thing.
What are you most looking forward to with this team in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to watching them play. Like, I'm looking forward to watching Nick Kurtz hit and Josh Hartle pitch. You know what I mean? And I'm looking forward to those bus rides and just being together as a group. Again, we've got a really, our team hasn't missed a beat from last year to this year. The energy is very much the same. A lot of our guys in their exit meetings talked about how this year's team was even closer than last year's team. Now, what we don't know yet about this team, and we need to figure out, last year's team hated to lose, right? Everybody loves to win, but do you hate to lose? And that's an important distinction. Last year's team didn't want to just beat you. They wanted to embarrass you. So, this year's team, will we have that same kind of killer instinct? And I think we will, but one of our kind of sneaky leaders last year was Pierce Bennett. I mean, he was kind of our glue guy. He was the guy that, and if you know Pierce Bennett, he never loses at ping pong or cornhole or anything he does. He wins. He's not the most talented guy. He doesn't practice the most, but he just is a winner. And then Tommy Hawk was the same personality. Tommy Hawk would fight you, for an inch. And again, the personality on this team is going to be a little different because we don't have Pierce Bennett and Tommy Hawk, but we do have some older guys, so I think it's going to be kind of a more kind of savvy, kind of veteran, a little more kind of low-key team, but again, with some serious star power and firepower.
You can feel the energy. Obviously, we were here on Friday. We were here. Colin and I were here yesterday. We're here today. It's a little bit tamer today. Not as many guys running around, but the energy and the team aspect and how close they are, you can feel it, and you can feel this team expects to be there at the end holding up the trophy, and obviously they're going to take the necessary steps to get there. Is that kind of the mix you would, in an ideal world, like the veteran leadership with the savviness mixed with the obvious star power of 5 potential first-round picks? Do you think that's kind of like sometimes the ingredients that you're looking for? Because again, Dan mentioned balance earlier when it comes to everything, but that is kind of a balance that when it comes to on-field production, that kind of translates a lot of times to success.
Yeah, I do like that mix. I think that's a good way to say it. And you know, having guys who are hungry, that's important too. Like, and we've got some unfinished business. I mean, there's no question about that. We felt like we missed an opportunity last year, and those opportunities don't come around very often. And thankfully, because Coach Moose and Billy did such a great job in recruiting with our freshman class and our portal class, you know, we've got the opportunity again. And you know, I don't know that any team can say they have that opportunity every year. And for us to have it back-to-back years at a school like Wake Forest is special.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, Coach, we truly appreciate you sitting down and talking with us. We're super excited for the rest of today, getting to walk around, highlight your facilities, obviously, which are some of the best in the country, and we appreciate you sitting down and taking the time to talk with us. I know it's busy this time of year, but, you know, it was a super awesome conversation, and I know our listeners specifically will appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and thanks for all you do for our game, Backside Groundballs.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. That'll conclude the episode for today.